Released in 1966, War of the Gargantuas is a lesser-known but cult-celebrated giant monster film released by Toho. It's a follow-up to 1965's Frankenstein Conquers the World, a film about a Godzilla-sized Frankenstein monster who goes on a rampage and fights another giant monster named Baragon, who would go on to later appear in the Godzilla series. When released in the U.S. in 1970, War of the Gargantuas was played in a double bill nationwide with Invasion of the Astro Monster. As most entries in this genre at the time, it was edited before releasing in the United States, and the American version contained some differences, such as altered scenes and a removal of any mentions to Frankenstein or the Frankenstein monster. Continuing from the end of Frankenstein Conquers the World, Gargantuas follows two new giant monsters named Sonda and Gyra, who were spawned from pieces of the Frankenstein monster from the last movie. One of the creatures is violent and aggressive, while the other is docile and much kinder. As always, the military attempts to kill the monsters, but when tempers flare between the two, they end up battling one another in an epic showdown in Tokyo. By this time in the mid-60s, Toho started gearing these films towards younger audiences, and so they added more human characteristics to their monsters, and this film remains one of the best examples of that. I have to say that personally, I find this the most well-paced giant monster movie of all time. It's not long, only an hour and a half, and the film is stuffed with scenes of the Gargantuas. At least one of them, anyway. You rarely go more than 5 minutes without seeing them, and they're almost always involved in some sort of action, attacking people, battling military, or fighting each other. Plus, the plot saves us from unnecessary complexity and explanations, instead introducing the monsters, elaborating on why they exist, and focusing on them for the remainder of the film. It's great, it's simple and effective, and I commend it for that approach. Apart from the plot, the special effects are also a treat. The miniature work is top-notch. Instead of just cities, we get mountains, forests, and airports, all done well and adding some nice variety to the environments. The suits for both Sonda and Gyra are good too, even though I'm not crazy about the design. They're much slimmer and give more mobility to the actors inside that lends itself to the action scenes, allowing for greater agility with their performances. This also means the fight at the end can allow them to do more interesting stuff than you'd see in most Godzilla movies. The monsters can move faster and with more fluidity, and thus allow for actual fighting, and this adds to the film in a big way. My only real criticism with Gargantuas is that it fails to really exploit its positive aspects to its highest potential. It spends all of its time showing us the monsters, and then when it finally builds to the fight at the end, it doesn't just sit back and let us enjoy the ride. Instead, it cuts back and forth from the fight to the human protagonists, and this breaks up the action and hurts the payoff. Also, while there's some cool destruction on display, a few more scenes could have benefited things, and the sequence where the military attacks Gyra goes on for far too long. Mild criticism notwithstanding, this is a really fun film and an absolute must-see for fans of the genre. If you want to check it out, I recommend the copy I bought, the 2-disc collector set that's a part of the Toho Master Collection. It comes packed with Rodan, as well as a behind-the-scenes documentary called Bringing Godzilla Down to Size. Both the US and Japanese versions of these films are on here, so if you're interested, look for this set. It's worth it.